Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a land of absolute extreme physical contrasts, truly epic scale, and honestly, an incredibly violent geological history. We're talking, of course, about Alaska. It's this fascinating place where the harshest extremes of nature meet the raw endurance of the human spirit. To really wrap our heads around Alaska, we've got to talk about its sheer scale. Get a load of this number, 663,000. That is the square mileage of this massive state. To put that into perspective, it's literally more than twice the size of Texas. It sits all by itself in the far northwest of North America, and it's actually closer to Asia than any other U.S. state, completely bordered by the Arctic and Pacific Oceans. So here's our quick roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the tectonic assembly. Then we'll map out the physical canvas, and finally, we'll cover human history and geopolitics.
Okay, part one, the tectonic assembly. We're talking about building a geological Frankenstein.
If you ask any veteran geologist, they'll tell you Alaska pretty much changes everything we know about how land masses form. It's not just one solid chunk of Earth. It's fundamentally this massive, chaotic collage of what we call terrains. These are discrete, fault-bounded blocks of rock. Imagine ancient volcanic island arcs just drifting across the Pacific Ocean for eons and eventually smashing into the edge of North America like pieces of a giant, violent puzzle. If we put on our researcher hats and track the docking of these ancient landmasses, a pretty wild timeline emerges. Going way back, from 539 to 251 million years ago, we mostly see marine shells and early volcanism. But fast forward to the Mesozoic era, and massive offshore island arcs, like the Wrangellia and Alexander terranes, violently crash into the continent. And finally, from 66 million years ago, right up to the present day, newer plates like the Yakutat Block began their ongoing slow-motion collision. And here's the crazy part. This geological assembly isn't just ancient history. It is an incredibly active process happening right beneath our feet today. That Yakutat Block is currently colliding with the mainland, and it's driving this rapid uplift of the St. Elias Mountains at a staggering rate of about 5 kilometers per million years. Deep down beneath the surface, gradient is actively forming, and volcanoes out in the Aleutian Arc are still violently erupting.
Now, all this ongoing collision definitely has terrifying real-world consequences. Take March 27, 1964. The sheer compressional force of the Pacific Plate sinking beneath the continental plate triggered a 9.2 magnitude megathrust earthquake. The raw power of the subterranean crash literally shifted the Earth's elevation. I mean, the ground in some areas was thrust upward by an unbelievable 38 feet, and it spawned a massive tsunami with waves reaching up to 220 feet high. It is absolute, undeniable proof of this ongoing tectonic plate movement.
Moving right along to Section 2, the physical canvas. Let's look at the regions and climates. For the science students watching, here's a really quick tutorial on how the state's terrain is actually structured. We can categorize Alaska into 4 distinct physiographic regions. Up north, you have the flat, frozen Arctic lowlands. Right below that is the rugged, rocky mountain system, which is heavily defined by the towering Brooks Range. Then the interior makes up the central basins and highlands, this beautiful rolling landscape around the Yukon River. And finally, hugging the southern coast is the highly tectonically active Pacific Mountain System. And anchored right there in that Pacific Mountain System is the absolute crowning jewel of Alaska's tectonic evolution, Denali. Towering an astounding 20,310 feet above sea level, it stands as the highest peak in North America. And the amazing thing is, it literally rides on top of those compressing plates below, meaning it's being actively pushed even higher into the sky by those geological forces we just tracked. Now, because those tectonic collisions pushed up massive mountain barriers, they ended up creating 5 wildly diverse, isolated climate zones. It's incredible. You go from the mild, wet maritime climate in the coastal rainforests all the way to the completely frozen Arctic zone up north. And then, blocked off by mountains in the interior, the continental zone boasts a jaw-dropping temperature contrast. We're talking plunging to minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter and then soaring up to 100 degrees in the summer. But, despite the harshness of those Arctic and continental extremes, the environment up there provides moments of absolute, unparalleled wonder.
The aurora borealis, or the northern lights, are a true hallmark of the northern Alaskan skies. This happens when solar particles collide with gases high up in the Earth's atmosphere. It's just a breathtaking reminder of Alaska's incredibly unique position on the globe.
Which brings us to Section 3, Human History and Geopolitics, going from plates to politics. So, Alaska has been home to resilient indigenous peoples for thousands of years. But jumping to the 18th century, waves of European exploration began, most notably from the Russian Empire. At first, Russian ambitions were hugely lucrative, mostly driven by the rich sea otter fur trade after 1741. But as the decades rolled on, the harsh reality of the environment really set in. Overhunting completely depleted animal stocks, the Russians faced fierce revolts from native populations like the Tlingit and Aleut, and honestly, maintaining those colonies just became way too expensive.
Eager to offload this massive financial burden, Russia offered the territory to the United States. In 1867, U.S. Secretary of State William H. Seward championed the purchase. But let me tell you, the American public and politicians were incredibly skeptical. They relentlessly mocked the whole deal with catchphrases like Seward's folly and Seward's icebox. They were totally convinced the government was foolishly buying a useless, frozen wasteland. But despite all the mockery, the United States went ahead and finalized the purchase for exactly $7.2 million. Just to put that into perspective for a second, they bought a landmass more than twice the size of Texas for about 2 cents an acre. Looking back now, it easily stands as one of the cheapest and most consequential land acquisitions in global history.
Why? Because those 1867 skeptics couldn't possibly see what the ancient geology had prepared. Those ancient basins we talked about, they created massive oil and natural gas reserves at Prudhoe Bay. And those tectonic collisions forged complex, metamorphic rocks, rich in mineral deposits like gold, zinc, and lead. Plus, beyond extraction, this dramatic landscape has turned Alaska into the ultimate travel destination for nature lovers and adventurers, driving an explosive tourism industry centered around iconic spots like Denali National Park. And hey, beyond the economics, there is a massive geographical advantage. Today, Alaska's location, sitting right at the global crossroads of the Pacific and Arctic Oceans, makes it an absolutely critical, irreplaceable base for United States military and strategic defense infrastructure. It's literally a cornerstone of national security in the modern world. So that brings us to our final thought for today. Alaska started out as this violent puzzle of tectonic plates drifting across the ocean. It was sold off as a depleted, mocked icebox. Yet today, it stands as both a breathtaking natural wonder and an ultimate geopolitical asset. So as we look to the future of a changing climate and shifting global powers, what do you think will be the next chapter for the last frontier? I really hope this explainer gave you a deep, structured look into this absolutely fascinating state. Keep learning, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.